Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Guiding Light. I'm Jenna Carson,
I'm Sierra Larson.
and today we are beyond thrilled to have a very special guest, Alison Armstrong, who both Sierra and I really look up to.
Mhm.
Welcome, Alison.
Thank you. I'm honored.
We feel that Allison has channeled divine messages and words and truly shifts in mindset that can change the world, that have changed the world and have changed Sierra and I, as we have read Allison's work. She is a relationship expert and truly has devoted decades to studying men because she felt like she didn't understand them and didn't know how to treat them, and relationships weren't going well. So now she dedicates her life to sharing with others what she has learned about how men and women can not only interact well, but thrive and fulfill their spiritual potential as individuals, couples, and societies, because this is really about a cultural mindset in the way that we see each other. So, Allison, for listeners who have never heard of your work, can we start at the beginning? What led you to start studying the male brain?
Um, it's so funny. We didn't even think of it as a brain back then. It's just men. Um, have you listened to or read The Queen's Code?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the easiest way to say it is in the first chapter, what happened to Kimberly, where her friend was called a frog farmer after making that scathing accusation, that happened to me. Only only it was one of my colleagues and a kind of friend who was the one that made that really launched an attack in the middle of this seminar. And when he told her that some women turn frogs into princes and you, my dear, turn princes into frogs, it I had the vision that is described for Kimberly of a big white farmhouse, and I'm standing on the front steps, and there's hundreds and hundreds of frogs with little human heads. And there was my ex-husband and my most recent ex-boyfriend and the one before that, and then all the 10-day to 2-week relationships that I'd had since I was about 10 years old. And one after another. And I didn't know it until that happened, and I realized I was a frog farmer. I was a highly successful frog farmer, but I had no idea how I was bringing out the worst in men. I loved the idea that I was bringing out the worst in men because the alternative is they are their worst. That's who they are. So when I found out I was doing something and there was more there, it made sense of why I knew women who were happily married to men that I thought were jerks. Right? It's like, oh, that's how that works. And this, but I didn't know how I was going to figure this out. And then a question popped into my head. And it took decades for me to learn that those questions are how I'm guided. That questions pop into my head and they're very specific and they have added up to jillions of hours of content that came from pursuing a question. And the first question was, what if men are responding to women? And that set me up to start listening to men in a whole different way. So the first thing I had to learn to do is to not interrupt them and to and thank goodness it was what if. So I wasn't out to prove that men are responding to women. And I wasn't out to prove that they weren't. I was just, what if? And then I found like the stages of development, which we teach in the Amazing Development of Men, and then the prequel to the Queen's Code called Keys of the Kingdom. Those are ways that men are not responding to women. And Go figure. And there's all these ways that women think it's about us. We take it personally. And if we can't handle taking it personally anymore, we think it's about that man's relationship to all women, right? He's broken in some way. No, not true. But then there are ways they are responding to us. And we usually have it backwards. What we shouldn't take personally, we do, and what we should take personally, we don't.
Mm.
It's extraordinary how much it's just flipped. And so that's where it started. And it just, I thought it would take 2 or 3 months to learn everything worth knowing about these shallow creatures that was questionable whether they had souls, and for sure they were inferior humans to women. 2 or 3 months, I learned everything worth knowing. And that was this month, that was 34 years ago, 1991. And I never committed to some length of time. I didn't commit my life to doing it. Just when I started listening and seeing how wrong I was about who men are, I became fascinated. And I've been fascinated ever since. And I interact with our online students about 11 hours a month to make sure that they're getting what I learned today. What I learned, yeah, because it just I'm constantly learning. I learn while I'm sleeping. And then what you were talking about in terms of channeling, yes, I have watched videos of me leading our online workshops, and the thing that I said on that stage, I don't know. I call her the other Allison. And then the other Allison said, and it'll blow my mind. And then, as you no doubt know, the Queen's Code. I didn't write the Queen's Code. I didn't design it. I didn't create the characters, the plot, none of that. I did all the research. So everything in there I have validated with so many men and couples and different circumstances. And when I sat down to write it, just like Keys the Kingdom, a screen opened up, a movie started playing. These 8 characters showed me. 4 of them are from Keys the Kingdom. The other 4 just showed me. They just were in the movie. And it took 3 weeks to type the Queen's Code. It normally takes a year and a half for somebody to write a book that long. But I typed it, and then we had to edit it. And then we had to publish it. Um, but question after question, what if men are responding to women? What if people only do what's most important to them? Because that's all that rises to the top to get done. What if no one's misbehaving, including you? Flip side of that is, what if there's a good reason for that? Um, it goes on and on, but I'll stop. What else do you want to ask?
Well, you're reminding me of in the Queen's Code, and I'm thinking elsewhere in your work, there's this default that a lot of we women, including myself, have had, which is this idea that men are just misbehaving women. And so I'll speak for me, I have projected myself as a woman, my needs, my worldview, my orientation, my brain onto the male brain. And it's just not the way things work for men. And so that's why for so much of my life, I've looked at men and think, oh, you're misbehaving because I'm thinking that anything different than the my female prerogative is a misbehavior. And the Queen's Code talks about how men operate to get needs met, and they're good at getting their needs met, or at least trying to, and
They're not good at
they're
it.
not good at it.
I thought they were good at it. I thought they were better at it than women. I'm sorry to interrupt, but both men and women suck at, can I say that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
At identifying their needs, expressing their needs in an empowering rather than demanding or snarky way, um, describing what the need met would look like, because we assume, first of all, I shouldn't have to tell you what I need. because it's obvious. So I shouldn't have to tell you in the first place. And okay, now I've told you. I shouldn't have to describe it to you because, duh, everybody knows what affection, for example, looks like. Everybody knows what affection looks like. Why should I have to describe it to you? Why should I have to describe to you what it means to take out the trash completely from beginning to end? It's it's obvious. No, to a man, that's about 5 tasks that you've just asked for. Uh, and I shouldn't really, I should not have to appreciate you for doing something that you just should do because you're my brother, father, boyfriend, husband, fiance, son. You should just do that. Why do I have to appreciate you? What, who are these people who need so much appreciation? It's just, oh, they're so immature and needy. It's just gross. Hello. If you want anything to continue, you need to appreciate them. Why? Because the appreciation returns to them some of the energy that they spent on you. That's how you pass it back in appreciation. And anything that you appreciate them more in a currency that they value more than the currency of time and energy and resources that they spent to do that for you, if your appreciation is perceived as more than what they spent, let's for sure do that again. That was a great return on investment. Do that again. How else could we do that? How could we do it better? Oh my gosh, every time I add a little extra to it, she gets even more excited. Well, okay, now how can I surprise her? That's where my husband got to. Surprise trash taking out.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
And I told him under what circumstances a surprise would be nice, because anything that wastes a trash bag that has not fulfilled its capacity, that would be upsetting to me. Unless it stinks, then take it whatever you want. But it applies to everything. It applies to a back rub, to putting the kids to bed. It's across the board. We have to identify it, say it, ask, are they willing to, right? We map this all out in the Queen's Code and in our Understanding Men workshop, but we think we shouldn't have to do any of that. And part of our dissatisfaction in life is I'm a woman and you're a woman, so why should I even have to tell you? But we're not all the same, and our brains aren't all configured the same way by gender hormones because it changes in different parts of life, and it changes even in a woman's cycle. But if you're still menstruating, which I would assume you two are, I am not. Yay. It's been like 15 years. It's one of my favorite things. But it what you needed yesterday doesn't mean you need it today. So check in. Honey, would it be good if I did this today again? Actually, it was awesome yesterday, and I'm too tired to appreciate it today. So save it. Save it for when I have more energy. that is experienced as service. Like that was so kind of you to tell me to not spend my energy in a way that it's not going to come back. This is just one of hundreds of things that we have to pay attention to.
Yeah, we're just sitting here. I can see Jenna and I just sitting here soaking up like everything you're saying because we just know how valuable it is. So thank you. I love how you're saying like, things change. And I love in the book that the couple Claudia and Bert who have been together for 50 years, he goes, I think we need to make a new deal because he
Mhm.
saw that like things were changing. She had different needs and so then he brought that to her. And I love how it just goes across, like you're saying, like hormonal cycles, it's going across, you know, um, generations, and what you might need at the very beginning of a relationship is different than 50 years later. And so
Mhm.
I love that you take that perspective and it's just multi-generational.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
I didn't invent the characters but they all have been validated. And when when I started studying men, I was Melissa. I was
Mhm.
like that. And with that kind of uh I don't know, it's just like a wake of bodies, all the bodies left behind from the emasculation. And but I I knew I needed to write a book, and I found out early on it had to be fiction because it's the only way we can let ourselves be open enough to see ourselves in a character, to see ourselves in an interaction. Oh my gosh, I do that. If someone's telling us, do this, don't do that, it's very, very hard to absorb, right? And they're so funny. And getting to be in the minds of men, of four different men, and see how they're thinking and what they're thinking. Oh my goodness gracious. And then in the minds of the women, and then the minds of the men, and how the women see themselves, and then you get to see that character from their husband, boyfriend's, grandpa, father's, point of view. And like, we are all in our own blind spot, right? We're just,
Mhm.
there's so much, like, she thinks this is happening and this is what's happening. She thinks he's being lazy, not closing the garage door. And she's having a panic over how unsafe that is, even though she doesn't even know it. It's under the surface. And then you find out it's for a completely different reason that I won't give away because that would be a spoiler. But you
Yeah.
know.
Oh, I love that part. One of the things that I was telling Jenna, I was like, Allison's gonna get my therapist fired because reading this book just kidding, Elaine. But but it was like more progress had been made, I feel like, in my own understanding of myself than in reading the first three chapters of this book than I had in like 3 years of therapy because I never realized how women, or I guess even myself, would utilize emotional aggression to make themselves feel safe from a man. Because when we can kind of, you know, attack emotionally, then we feel safer physically. And not that I've ever felt unsafe with my husband at all or anything, but like the subconscious idea of this person really could overpower me if they wanted to, and being able to have some sense of control over that was really interesting for me, of that, of like, no, I'm vulnerable physically against other men, but he's vulnerable emotionally. And as he needs to like protect me physically, I need to protect him emotionally. And having that idea of like, he's never put a hand on me, nothing, but have I like attacked him emotionally, and with, and the emasculation that you talk about. And so it was really eye-opening for me of like, oh my gosh, like I haven't been being maybe the best provider of emotional safety that he needs. Like he's been the provider of physical safety for me.
Mm. Wow. That is awesome that you saw that. It's not pointed out in the Queen's Code. You
Mm.
saw that. Way to go.
Oh, thanks. I was like, it's clearly there. Everyone reads that. So yeah, I don't know.
No, no, but you're
Oh.
absolutely right. Yeah, men are okay. So, did you all read Making Sense of Men?
I did.
I
Okay,
haven't yet.
so it's the only nonfiction actual book that we published, and I should do an audiobook for it, but I haven't. And it distinguishes between the kind of attraction that has a man be compelled to take from you versus the kind of attraction that has a man be compelled to give to you and take care of you and protect you and even fall in love with you. And so how come I said that is because when a man has the second kind of attraction, and we'll just use the word cares. When a man cares about you, which is something they either choose to care or they're surprised to find out they care, and they know when they care, they're vulnerable.
Mhm.
Like, My son-in-law, when he met my daughter in person after connecting through an app, his reaction to meeting her was, oh shit, I could really care about her. And I mean, that was the immediate reaction. And men have said they know in about 30 seconds who this woman could be in their life, because what has them care is visible to men. They're highly perceptive. And what has them care, what has them, this is how they fall in love at first sight. It's visible. They see it. And we think they're insensitive. They're so sensitive.
Yeah.
Allison, how are some of the ways that women inadvertently emasculate men, even men who are very interested in us, and then, because of that sensitivity, shut down when they're emasculated?
Ay, ay, ay. You don't know how big a question you asked. Because all the qualifiers. So to finish the thought I had before, because I lost my train, is that if a man cares about you, that's what makes him vulnerable emotionally. If he doesn't care about you, he's invulnerable. And but we think they're just all the same. We don't distinguish these types of attraction and what they connect with in a man. And so we don't understand, like, if a man's behaving this way, you have no basis for a long-term relationship. It's going to be a disaster because he doesn't care. And but when we have too much chemistry, we're in pursuit, and we don't even notice he doesn't care because we're trying to capture him. So we don't even notice how we're not being treated the way we want to be treated long term. So the the more he cares, which would be like brothers can care so deeply about their sisters, and then sisters can be really mean to their brothers, really mean. Um, Fathers and their daughters, incredibly vulnerable, but they're going to hide it because that's how men are built. They are warriors, so they conceal their vulnerabilities. And we have to be so safe. We have to be so safe for a man to tell us what he needs, because to him, that's a weakness he's revealing. And needs and emotions and feelings, he has to believe that we won't use them against him. And and if we prove the opposite, that's the end. Really, the end. They could stay married for 30 more years, but they'll never do that again. And so, ways that we emasculate. Well, in this domain of being vulnerable, um, emotionally, one of the biggest ways is through complaining and criticizing. Two of the biggest ways: complaining and criticism. Complaining is a kind of criticism. And criticism, women criticize men because women are highly motivated by criticism. We can't not adapt to a criticism, even from somebody that we don't respect, even when we disagree with the criticism. I look great in pink lipstick. Why are they telling me not to do that? Forget them. But every time she puts on the pink lipstick, she'll be thinking of the woman who said she didn't look good, but I'm going to wear it anyway. Nana, nana. Right? Like, and men don't know this. They've asked me, how do you criticize a woman effectively? You don't. And this is why I want women to do the Understanding Women workshop, because women get criticized by men for the ways that we're not like men. Well, while they're hairy, misbehaving women, we're scattered, emotionally indulgent men. And so they keep trying to get us to focus and not make such a big deal out of our emotions. And poor guys, they have no idea what they're dealing with. And some of them know that they don't know, but many of them just think we're a kind of man that needs to be made to act right. We need to be controlled. And I had to bring out the worst in a woman, try to control her. So, yes, criticism, men have layers of criticism, layers of protection against criticism. Actually, a video on YouTube called Why Criticism Never Works and Why We Do It Anyway. I'll leave it because it's a whole thing that unwraps it. But because of who you are in their life, until you have lost their respect, your criticism cuts. And the worst criticism is the criticism that when they check to see if that's true for them, it's not. It can be crushing that someone so important to them believes that about them. That's what hurts. And this is why that thing that we do, and it's talked about in chapter 2, where when a man doesn't behave the way we expect, then we try to figure out why he didn't behave the way we expect. And because it's so true for women, we assume that it's because he doesn't feel right. That if we could get him to feel right, we could get him to act right. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we were more or less of something that had him love and or respect or care about us more, then he would naturally do what's obviously the right thing to do. And they're just not put together the way that we are. They don't even, their feelings aren't even the same part of their bodies as ours, which is why they think we're making such a big deal out of our feelings. One man said, why do women always bring their feelings to the center? It had me go research, go find out where their feelings were located. Because, I mean, we basically have a stack of pancakes right here. We have sadness and joy, and we have compassion and love, right? There's a stack of pancakes right here. And they're already here. We didn't put them here. They've always been here. What are you talking about? Right? But no, men don't experience happiness in the same part of their bodies that we do. They don't experience anger in the same part, dread in the same part. I mean, it's something you might, Sierra, I want to ask your husband. So when you feel this, where in your body do you feel it? But you're gonna have to
His
wait. You're
his
gonna have to
hands.
wait. Well, it definitely, men
Mm-hmm.
cross the shoulders, out the hands. That's where happiness and anger, both of them go that way. That's their stack, right? Power, happiness, and anger all across here. And this is why we emasculate them when they're happy, because we perceive the power, and the power is scary to us. So we attack them. So to finish answering your question, Jenna, criticism and complaining are high on the list. The ones that are sneaky are the withholdings. I call them the green emasculation because they spend very little energy. They have a small footprint, but a huge effect. So withholding appreciation, withholding accountability, withholding admiration. One woman said, I withhold food. Just don't feed them. How to bring out the worst in men. Withhold food, withhold sex, withhold admiration, withhold actionable information. No, just drown them in details that can't be done anything about. I think
Yeah.
it's important for each of us to figure out what our go-tos are. Like what are our main go-tos? Because we tend to use them over and over again. We don't have to have even 5 different ways. We'll just keep going to the same way.
Mm. Yeah. In the book, I love how you said like their joy is in their chest. You kept using the words like that his chest swelled with pride, and I noticed I was like instantly put off by that. I noticed that feeling of like, because to me it was, I can't express the feeling, but it was like almost no, don't get so big.
Exactly.
Don't swell up, like don't, because your shoulders go back, your confidence, and it's just like, no, no, no. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah,
If
and
that's my reaction every time a man in my life is, getting bigger, it's because he's happy, because he feels proud of himself, but that's threatening of you don't be too proud, don't be arrogant. Yeah, sorry, I didn't.
no, 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 you're on exactly the right track because what what I've had to distinguish, and it shows up in the Queen's Code, is what triggers us to emasculate, how do we emasculate, and then how do we justify having emasculated? And a trigger is a man in his power. That is definitely a trigger. And it's a trigger because ancestral memories and current events and current and things in our own past have shown us that they do in fact use being bigger and stronger to hurt us. And 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 trauma has a way of it's communicable. So one woman can speak of how she was hurt, and all the women listening will hear it as if it happened to them. It's how the brain protects them. Learn everything you can from this. And we want all the details so we can know what to do and how to protect ourselves. But it has this terrible effect of us thinking this is who men are. Men who hurt women are a very small percentage of the population. The problem is they get around. They are prolific. And the way one man put it, which is so serving, it was amazing. He said, you can't tell the difference between a wolf and a sheepdog if all you're looking for is teeth. And it was on a panel of men, and I was like, whoa. Yeah, if you're just looking for teeth, they look exactly the same. But then I went on to think about, okay, if we can't tell the difference between a wolf or a sheepdog, who can? And the answer is a sheepdog. That's what they were bred for, to attack the wolves that are coming off the sheep, coming after the sheep, but don't attack each other. And so it's why I always recommend, especially for women who are considering a man, that like, oh, I think he might be the one or whatever, or, oh, I'm really excited about this. I want to go full bore. Have them come meet your sheepdogs. And then don't discount what the sheepdog say. He's up to no good. He's not a good man. That is a bad man. Don't trust him. We argue. Oh, you're judging so harshly, He hasn't had an easy life. Like, we'll argue with sheepdogs and then they give up. And if you want to be really expressed, if you're single and you'd like to be coupled, if you want to be really expressed, and let's say you love dancing, well, take your sheepdog, plant him in a bar stool, have him keep an eye on you, and go out there and dance. And then notice all the men who are noticing the sheepdog and still have the courage to come up to you and say, could I dance with you? Would that be all right with him? That guy thinks you're special. Try a yes. Find out. I could go on and on. They're not who we think they are. They are striving to use their strength and power for the best good that they perceive. And if we're not telling them what we need and what matters to us, they're going to decide what we need. They're going to decide what to, I call it decide and provide. Both men and women do this. We decide what other people need and we provide it without checking because we want to surprise them. This is going to happen tomorrow. Well, it's today, Valentine's Day. Most men do so little on Valentine's Day because they don't know what's going to work. So they don't want to spend time and resources on what's not going to work. So if we tell them this is what I need on Valentine's Day, and this is what will make me happy, those are the two categories, And it seems like maybe there's some connection to the past. Oh, yeah, I remember she did light up when I did that. Oh, okay. Well, now they're going to do it. And if it, okay, next year, now I know what to do, which means the next year you might need to say, honey, I need to update you before Valentine's Day because my preferences have changed. My needs have changed, right? But they care, and they will project onto us. I mean, when I told Dennis Prager on KRLA, Christian radio, right? He's a Jewish scholar. he's he's syndicated in a jillion places. When I told him that men could have more sex if their wives could have less orgasms, he said, "You didn't mean that you got that backwards, right?" No. Women say no to sex because their husbands have projected onto them that they need to have an orgasm, and they're gonna keep her awake until she does. If orgasms were optional, honey, I really would like to have sex with you. And would if you agree, would you like to have an orgasm? One or more? Or do you don't need that tonight? Because we know our bodies, and unconsciously we even know, I call it the oxytocin tank. The oxytocin account, we check the oxytocin account. If we have not done enough during the day to build up our oxytocin, we will dread sex, and we will be depressed by having had it, and even more depressed by having had an orgasm. So that's how where the no's are generated from, which is why women initiate sex with men the way that we would prefer. Like I would ask my husband in the morning, could we have sex tonight? Because I wanted to know if I was gonna, and then I would unconsciously do all the rhythmic motions and motions that build oxytocin. So I'd have a bunch in my account. So I'd have great orgasms. I wouldn't be depressed afterwards because I wouldn't be depleted. I wouldn't be in the negative. And it's hilarious. I learned this very early on. This man said you can never overestimate the effect of having to perform for a man
Mm,
during
mm.
sex. And so once I took these questions from our sex and intimacy course, I took them to my husband, and I picked a question. I said, "How do you like me to initiate sex?" And he paused and he said, "I like all the ways that you initiate sex. I just wish you would initiate it when it's going to happen in the next 5 minutes."
Uh,
And I was stunned. And then I realized, like, okay, so if it's going to happen in the next 5 minutes, I can assess my own abilities, and I'll know if I'm able to perform or not by how my body reacts to that invitation. I know I don't have to worry about that. And I had a funny reaction, but I was like, oh my gosh, the penis is listening. And the penis has
mm.
no future. The penis has no tonight.
It's now.
The
It's
penis lives
now.
in the now. Yes. We project onto the other. We do what works for us for the other, and then we wonder what's wrong with them that it doesn't work for them. Both men and
Yeah.
women.
Yes, I was recently listening to that part in the Queen's Code about how men have these needs and they're really immediate, whereas women, we can just keep putting our needs off until it's too late and we realize, oh, I've been putting this need off for so long. And so that what you said about sex totally makes sense. And we're planners, right? We're going to plan ahead. Um, I love that you opened up the topic of sex because it's so integral in everything, all of your work. It's just important in our relationships. And in the Queen's Code, we get to know a character who has had painful experiences with sex. And so I wanted to ask you, Allison, what you recommend for those of us who have had painful experiences with it. Where do we start to heal some of that pain and to see sex not as a dangerous thing, but a joyful, opportunity?
Mhm. Well, first I would say most people, men and women, women and men, have had, at the very least, hurtful sexual experiences. Hurtful emotionally, hurtful to their self image, their identity, um, because of the nature of sex itself. And because of it's usually arrived at through sexual attraction, which is an attraction of object to object. And you don't treat an object with respect. You're not sensitive with an object. You take and use the object any way you want. And but on the other hand, there's also in our course, understanding sex and intimacy, which men have wanted to be able to learn what we teach since 1995. And when we opened up the courses, we recorded to a lot with a live audience of women and women only courses. When we opened it up for men to do them online, which is the live videos plus teaching videos from me plus prompts, there it's illuminated so much for them of what women don't understand about them. And understanding sex and intimacy starts with writing down your history of sex by decade. And in terms of you what did you see? What did you see or hear, or experience? And what did you learn? Which may not be what your parents wanted to teach you, what you learned, right? And you do it by 0 to 9, 10 to 19. It keeps going by decades. And it gets written down just in phrases, sometimes just a name. Honestly, for me, one of them was just the kind of car he drove.
The Porsche.
Yep, yep, yep. And and so what happens is after it's written down, then we start looking through these lenses of what we teach in understanding men, which is it's a different form, and it has things in it that the Queen's Code doesn't, and the Queen's Code has things that it doesn't. They're great complements to each other, is what people have said. They love doing one than the other. And so we apply things like single focus and needing to win, um and the breaking point of needs and their stages of development, how that affects their sexuality. And we take those lenses and we teach about it, and then they apply it to what was written on their pages. And you end up writing like SF for, oh, that I wasn't being ignored. That was single focus. Oh, he wasn't being inconsiderate. That was single focus. Oh, single focus, single focus. And so single focus ends up a lot of places. And then win, 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 win things at a lot of places. And then only sexually attracted, not termed and enchanted. So it'll just be SA, 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 SA. And things lift. It wasn't what I thought it was, so it couldn't have meant what I made it mean. And I remember a woman who'd had really bad experiences, and she was a parole officer. And what she said at the end of that course, was, I, after learning about men's sexuality, I now feel safe because of who men are, not in spite of who men are. Which you can imagine, she's a parole officer, right? She had to work with, not the most upstanding citizens all day long, and not be safe. And she started to feel safe. And all of our curriculum is healing. It it can't not be. And it heals with illumination, it heals with humor, it heals with finding out oh, this isn't personal at all. Not at all. Well, I just want to say something about the relationship between what we do and what therapists provide. And one of our workshop leaders was a psychologist. She was a doctor of psychology, and she sent most of her patients to do our workshops. And then she became a workshop leader. And therapists send people to do our workshops all the time. They're like always in the top 15 referrers. And what they've said about it is that what we do clears up what isn't personal. And it leaves the therapist then able to help a man or woman with what is personal. So they get to be more effective. And so we've trained probably back when we had a training program like this, we probably trained 100 therapists literally in how to teach our work so that they could intervene at the point that it was really not a disservice to the person to continue to think what they're upset about was personal, or what was happening in their marriage was because he's such and such. No, this happened for different reasons. And I think that's how they can end up being a good partnership. And your therapist now can interact with you on a completely different level, which I bet if you asked her, she's grateful for.
Yeah.
Right?
I've already sent so many of my clients even to like, oh, you have to read the Queen's Code. Like, we'll just start there. Just read the Queen's Code and we'll go from there. So definitely.
Perfect. Perfect.
One of the things that like made me so sad when reading this is I have a son. I have a 6-year-old son, and
Mm,
I started thinking about I started thinking about all the ways I might be emasculating my son, and that hurt.
mm,
That hurt. Because there are things that my son, I realize, was or is trying to provide for me that I don't allow him to provide, and I
mm,
didn't even think of it. And thankfully, I think he's very forgiving and I can work on that now that I know. But I just, when you have that moment and Kimberly starts noticing how people are emasculating men, boys, however, and you have that moment and you kind of see yourself in these characters, it's just heartbreaking of like, I did that. I emasculated. I'm so sorry. And while I do feel bad for doing that for my husband, what I really hits home for me is like doing that to my son. That
mm.
is like a hard thing. So I don't know if you have anything with particularly like your young boys or like sons with that, or how to, yeah.
Thanks for asking. My son was 3.5. Yeah, he was 3.5 when I started studying men. And and just before his fourth birthday, her name is Ellen Hurst, and I owe her my life, called me up on the phone and said, we need to talk. Men are attracted to you like bees to honey, and when you're done with them, it's as if they've been with a vampire. Like, what? I probably wouldn't have kept listening except for how much respect I had for Ellen. And she was the only woman I knew whose life I wanted. She'd been married for 13 years. She had 2 kids, and her husband was still courting her. How did this happen? Right. And Ellen pointed out to me all the ways that she'd seen me emasculate men or knew I had because she saw the result. And then she said, I want you to stop. And I was like, well, then how am I going to protect myself? I it felt like she was saying, cut my own heart out with a spoon, right? And I just, what? And then that's when I saw that every time I emasculated a man, I I had a moment of glee, but it reinforced my own sense of powerlessness, that I had to attack their power because I wasn't in touch with mine. And when I was putting up resistance to Ellen about she was telling me these ways she'd seen me emasculate, and I'd say, "Oh yeah, that was a good one. Oh, I remember that. That was so effective." I didn't see anything wrong with it. I'm being a good woman. I am doing my part of keeping these beasts under control. And then she said, "You're even doing it to Jeffrey." And it was like, oh man. I mean, she pulled out the big card, and I knew she was right. When he was born, his father did not do what he should have done while I was in childbirth. And then he left the hospital immediately to go get some sleep before he went to work. And and I'm in the hospital holding my baby boy going, "I'm going to raise you to have brilliant relationships with women, not like your dad." And it really was, I'm going to carve the man out of you. And I did everything I could. Whenever he would do something that was typically male, I would I would intervene. I mean, he he turned bananas into guns because he wasn't allowed to have a plastic gun. So, ay, ay, ay. So I would say they're so sensitive to us. You're his mom, right? Talk about, who does he care about? Who does he want to be the hero for? His mom. And and what men have taught us about emasculation, when, because we've interviewed them, like, so a whole group actually. So what is the most important thing to do when you've emasculated a man? And so men said, "Stop." And then we had to like take that in. He goes, "And then apologize, and then leave it alone. They're his balls. He'll take care of them." And I've also had a man say the first time his wife apologized to him for having been emasculating him for years was the second best moment, second only to the birth of his daughter. Yeah.
Wow.
So if you stop emasculating your son, he will perceive that. If you ever ask forgiveness for what you've done, since you've changed, it makes it easy to do. If people who keep asking forgiveness while they're doing the same thing, we run out, right? Like, no. So it's why it's good to understand the stages of development, whether it's through Keys to the Kingdom or the Amazing Development of Men, because we don't have any children. We have really small men, medium men, fully physically grown men, then knights, princes, kings. And what emasculates them is there's universally, and then there's particular to that stage of development. And for a page is doing what a knight's doing. He's challenging himself to develop abilities that he has decided he wants to develop. And we emasculate them by saying, "No, you can't work on that. You have to develop this ability because this is the age you are now, and this is when you have to develop this." Instead of letting them follow their nose and their own, what they want to work on. And I got to see this with my grandson, who's now, oh my gosh, he's 14 months old today.
Yay!
Yeah, and he started walking early, which I suspected he would. And uh by 11 and a half months, Christmas time, he got a plastic rocking horse. And he did not ride the rocking horse. He climbed on top of the rocking horse, stood up on the seat, was not holding on to the handlebars, and then would try to make it move while balancing. And he did this, he just kept working on it. Right? He chose this. And it's one of the funnest things about having a grandson is watching these when his single focus is on me, right? And I even said to him, do you know I can't look away when you're looking at me? I can't do anything else. And then when his single focus is on some challenge that he has set himself, and then when his being present has been taken over by a physical event, especially with that he hasn't experienced before, right? So like being sick in a new way, or I mean, babies are freaked out. They've never pooped in the womb. This is a terrifying event. What is happening in my body? This hurts. And what's happening? They've never been hungry. They've never been cold. This has never happened before. Freaked out about it. And it keeps happening, right? You'll see moments when something that's never happened before, they'll have their own little caveman reaction. And then if you let them do what they're inclined to do from that moment, which might be to lean into it, right? Or it might be to run away from it, but not try to have them do something other than their own reaction, honor their reaction. Can you see how early we feel like we're wrong somehow because our parents are trying to shape us in a way they're doing it to protect us, but they're trying to shape us in a way that they don't know how diminishing it is. And that's what was modeled for us. So please go easy on yourself and give yourself a lot of points, a lot of credit. I noticed. I noticed. Oh, I did something yesterday that might have been diminishing to my son. I'm going to apologize to him for it. I'm sorry when I barked at you about that yesterday. Thanks. Or and then they're like, it was okay. Right? As they get
Yeah.
older and older, no biggie, mom. So
Yeah.
my son's now 36. And when my husband died, he came and stayed with me for almost a month just to take care of me. He just decided to do that. The boy that I was emasculating at 3.5 years old, if I had kept doing that, would not have been the man who provided that.
Allison, you leave us speechless. I was just like, in my head, I'm like, we're supposed to be talking now, but we're just like, I can feel like everything. I'm just absorbing all of your wisdom as like much as we can, like sponges, and we're just so grateful for all of it. Thank you, because that's
You're
incredible.
welcome. And silences are good for everybody. Space, time, space, emotional space to let it happen.
Yeah.
It's one of the things most people don't provide. We don't pause to let people think, to let people process, to let people absorb, to let people laugh. We don't pause. We don't leave any space for other people. Like, gotta get all the words in because we gotta get the words in, and this is my last chance. And a minute and you're not paying attention anymore, so I'm gonna talk even faster and get even more in your face.
This actually reminds me, Allison, of one of the most groundbreaking things that I learned from you, which
Yeah,
is to listen. I thought I was a pretty good listener, like as a chaplain,
yeah,
but I realized I'm always interrupting men. And you teach in many different ways
yep.
to listen to men, give them space, and the men will tell you when they're done talking. They will say, and that's all I have to say about that.
The Forrest Gump.
Yep, yep. Or I'm done. That's all. Yeah, exactly. It's, I mean, one of the things to go easy on ourselves about is we have tremendous instincts in this area. And one of the instincts is, I call it shoo the critters. So if you think of being a gatherer and you go into a meadow every day and you are putting your life at risk in that meadow because there's critters there, but you're doing it to find things that are useful and edible and medicinal, and you might get to bring home something just because it was beautiful. But we literally, and I was taught this in Alaska, by the naturalist guide, as we were moving across the terrain. Keep talking. Make sure that you keep a conversation going so the animals can hear us coming and move out of the way. We don't want to startle them. And it was in perfect alignment with, yeah, we somebody's got to be talking, or the critters around this corner aren't going to know we're coming. They, and I mean, we could die from a wound from a squirrel, It's- let alone a raccoon or, geez, a badger. So that we're supposed to be talking. When you said, like, we're supposed to be talking, we think we're supposed to be talking. And we'll even get mad at men because we'll stop talking and they won't pick up their turn. They won't do their share. And so we're like, it's all up to me. So we start talking again and we start talking again. And they feel perfectly safe. They know nothing about critters. They don't see critters, whatever, there's critters. They just don't care. They're focused on something else, like getting you to the restaurant. And we're thinking we've got to keep this going. And my daughter was 9 and she had a boyfriend, which meant that she wrote a letter and gave it to her best friend, and her best friend gave it to her brother, and her brother gave it to the boy. Have you heard me talk about this somewhere else?
No, I'm just laughing because I
No.
remember that in my life.
Yeah, mine too. I'm just like, yeah, that's how you get a boyfriend at 9.
That's how and that's what they did. She and
Mhm.
her boyfriend. And then she came to me one morning and she was freaked out. She's like, I'm gonna see Jason today. I'm I'm gonna be in the same place as him. Like, oh, okay. She goes, what do I say? I don't know what to say, Mom. What do I say? And I said, well, if you're standing nearby and you seem happy, you don't have to say anything. Really? Yes, really. He'll be just fine with the quiet. Then she looked over and said, I can see having you as my mom is gonna come in really handy.
Oh,
She said that young.
oh, good.
She did our workshop when she was 13 years old and laid down the sword. And then she was volunteering within a year. And then she was working with me by the time she was 15 years old. She traveled with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
pretty cute.
like the idea of, because I remember you saying, I think it was in another podcast, but it was talking about, you were talking about hunter gatherers, or gatherers versus hunters. And one of the things, if we're like walking through the woods gathering, foraging, yeah, we have to chit chat. If you're a hunter, you want to be quiet. You can be
Yep.
quiet and single focused. But
Mhm.
like gatherers, we have to have diffused awareness and we have to keep chatting so that the critters go away. That makes perfect sense to me. Like that's incredible to think about in that context.
Which is why when a woman sees a full garbage can while she's got
Mhm.
other things she's doing, it's going to bug her. And when a man has a task he's working on and sees it, he's able to filter it out because it's not the most important thing. It's not what he's hunting. And that's another thing I loved learning from you is
Sorry. We call it single focus, and something for women to know, because they think they're being filtered out, is that it's not, they don't do it. The moment they commit, the brain filters out everything considered irrelevant to what they've committed to. The result, the destination, the goal, everything's irrelevant. everything's irrelevant to that. And this causes a lot of problems because like a man might decide she's the one and he's pursuing her. He is hunting this woman as his wife. Hunt the wife, hunt the wife, hunt the wife, capture the wife. And his brain is screening out the information that could have been telling him she's the wrong person for you. But the moment he committed, she's it. It's irrelevant that she doesn't treat him respectfully. It's irrelevant that she doesn't like him. It's irrelevant that she doesn't support the things that are most important to him. He's going to capture her. Very dangerous. And it also happens to women because even though estrogen creates a naturally diffuse awareness, the moment we commit to something like, I'm going to be married by the end of the year, now we're hunting a husband. We have a committed state of mind and we're screening out without even thinking about it. Our brains are screening out what's irrelevant to that. I'm going to be married by the end of the year. Okay, he's good enough. Let's get married. When she knows hardly anything about him, including he hasn't proven he cares about and has agreed to what she needs.
Yeah, how can we prevent that, Allison, in our relationships when we're falling in love with someone? How can we be smart about it?
Well, we have to watch because it's going to keep being there. We have to watch attachment, which will partially arise out of a belief in scarcity. And this is actually why, for Valentine's Day, as a gift to the world, we took a program that we have charged for, and we put it on our YouTube channel in 6 different segments for people to watch. And it's about an hour and a half long altogether. And it's called Chemistry and Connection. And it actually illuminates the real source of both chemistry and connection, and that within that real source, they have opposite causes, which is why we end up thinking if we have chemistry, we're going to have to give up connection. Or if we have a deep connection, oh, if only we had chemistry. But once you see what causes chemistry and connection, it proceeds along the lines of the very last segment is now that you know what causes it, this is how you can cause it. You have a great connection and you want more chemistry, do this. You have a really nice amount of chemistry, you like it, it's not too much, you're still being yourself. How do you create more connection? Or you're way too attached to this person that you have chemistry and connection with, and you're not the right person for them, and they're not the right person for you, and you need to let go. And you don't want to let go. You can actually purposely cause less connection and less chemistry. So this thing we think is scarce and has to be found, no, you can manufacture both of them. This goes along also with a program that we have called Causing Love. The other thing we think is scarce. And so we got to hang on to it. Love and chemistry and connection, oh my gosh, we're crazy about them for good reason. I'm all for them, but we're at the effect of it. We think we'll find a wonderful person and then those things will all be there. If you want them for a lifetime with somebody in particular, uh, learn how to cause them. Look, you know how to, your husband says, hey, baby, you want to do it? Which they don't know is really not an attractive invitation. But because what he's thinking of doing is so obvious to him in his head, he thinks when he says that to you, you know exactly what he's talking about. So we teach them how to do that better in understanding women. But when he says that and you realize this is an immediate thing and you don't, but you're just not really feeling that attracted to him, but you know how to cause chemistry, you can just cause chemistry. You can, it's all a matter of perception, and you can go on a treasure hunt for the things that will literally have your mind and body react, jump in. Talk about power. I'm all about freedom and choosing and causing and
Yeah. Yeah, instead of just having to find it or having it's there, it's not like being able, there's a lot of hope in that. There's not like I could just say like I am thrilled. Well, is it okay if we link this to this
please,
episode? Okay, yeah, because I'm
please,
thr
it's
there's yeah, there's so much hope in that
yeah,
of oh no, we've lost this thing and we can get it back.
yeah, you can, and you have someone that was like there's the best friend, and you you adore them, and they're so good for you and supportive and uplifting, and if only there was some chemistry between you. You can. You really can. Think very carefully. Do you want to? Because you can. And yeah, so it's at on YouTube at Alison Armstrong Videos. And I'll leave the rest to you. And it's posted there. It's gonna stay there. But we put it up on Monday because there's so much angst around Valentine's Day, which I once I did a program called Avert the Valentine's Day Disaster, because the expectations are so high and few people can actually win at the expectations. And we need to dial it down to what would be enough. What is the, like with my husband, what I needed from him was a card that was addressed to his lover, not his wife, not the mother of children, a lover card. And then I wanted some really good chocolate. Yay. It's great. I mean, Valentine's Day was created from a poem by Chaucer that said halfway through the month of February, when in every bird finds its mate, we should exchange tokens between lovers. Tokens, not diamond rings, tokens, a rock.
Yeah, my husband and I have the tradition of celebrating Discount Chocolate Day, which is the day after Valentine's Day, and we
That's
go and
awesome.
buy up all the chocolate and we play this game called like chocolate roulette. And it's just like a fun because we have ones that we don't like and so we don't look at the little map. It's so fun. It's really fun, but
Chocolate. You
um
pick one and then, ew, or you pick one, yeah. I love
yeah.
that. That's great. Thanks for saying that.
If you don't mind, I have one burning question. Um, I was curious, in the book, it was talking about, asking a man to provide something that they cannot provide is cruel. What would be something like an example of that, or how do we know if it's something that they can't provide before we ask for it?
Well, that was directed at people who do know he can't provide it
Mm,
and they ask him for it. Now, a man may not be able to provide what you're asking for. And so it's respectful to say, if you can, without sacrificing yourself, this is what would make a difference for you to provide. So you just never want to box a man in, and women are always trying to box men in. We want to give them no choice, and we think that's is going to have us get what we need, but it does the opposite, because men are naturally generous and they will if they can, and sometimes they can't because they don't have the ability, or they don't have the energy, or they don't have the time, or they don't have the knowledge. And so if you ask a man for help in some way and he can't provide it, but you've been great in how you asked it, he'll how he'll help you is by sending you to the person who can help you. That's how they do it. And that's help. Make sense?
yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
but to intentionally demand something you know they can't provide without sacrificing who they are or what matters to them the most, that is cruel. And it's not going to turn out. It won't last. It's not sustainable, which is something I pay a lot of attention to.
Yeah. You also write about how we want both women and men in their power partnering together. And
Mm.
so, since we didn't explicitly state that earlier at the end of this episode, I want to state it now that that's what the desired outcome is that neither woman nor man is stripped of power, that there's healthy power of both working together. And Alison Armstrong, we just thank you so much for being with us today and for doing this work that helps men and women better understand each other and how to lift each other up. Is there any last word of wisdom you'd like to share with us before we wrap up today?
Well, given what you're up to with your podcast, we all have two nervous systems, very primitive nervous system and evolved nervous system. And instincts are the very primitive nervous system, and they respond to the perception of threats and opportunities. And since men and women have opposing instincts, we naturally bring out the worst in each other. We naturally antagonize each other. Nothing's wrong with anybody. We just literally have opposing instincts, like how a woman seeks safety interrupts a man's security. and and we don't know it. And so as you know, without awareness, we're stuck. We're just compelled. So becoming aware of the primitive instincts allows us to have what we call a victory of human spirit. And it is spirit. And it's all the goodies. All the goodies live over there. All the yuck lives over in what we would call human animal, human normal. I now more call it human normal than human animal or human instincts, because so many of our instincts I've discovered we share them with trees and beetles and viruses. They're so primitive. We have instincts that started with the birth of the planet, and they compel us to this day, and we think we're so evolved. And we think we did that because we're this way. No, you're a beetle. You had a beetle moment.
And it's okay. It's
and
okay.
and it's okay. But oh, I noticed I had a beetle moment. I noticed. Oh, okay. Is there anything I need to clean up? Is there anything you need me to own? Do I need to apologize for anything? Oh, thank goodness, no harm. Okay, so what I really meant to say is
Yes.
anything can be transformed by owning the dark side, the primitive side, the reactive side.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Allison. And where can our listeners find you? Where can we find the courses? Everything that you've mentioned today is just going to be so amazing and valuable. So where can they look to find all of it?
Um, AlisonArmstrong.com. And that's where our formal curriculum is. And the people in that curriculum are the ones I interact with. Um, it's like, yeah, 11 hours a month. And there's also all these one-off things that I've recorded. Like, people have to know this. People have to know this. And that's under our shop products. There's free stuff there. Everything that I've produced since 2006 would be on our website. Audible has really valuable information, but it's all much, much older. So the new, more evolved stuff, new ways of expressing it are on our website. And then on YouTube, Alison Armstrong videos, I think we now have 62 videos there. And there's playlists and they're sorted by different things. And I mean, you could spend a month watching videos and you maybe you did.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome.
Thank
You're
you for offering so many free resources so we can learn and then purchase your work. And I do recommend purchasing. I'm glad I did. So thank you again,
Oh,
Allison.
can I
Go
say
ahead.
one more
Yeah,
thing?
say
Yes.
it, please.
Thank you. Sorry, I interrupted. You were closing up. Please, 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 if you can, listen to the Queen's Code audiobook instead of reading the print book. The print book, you can't not filter it through how you think those people are. The audiobook, I am recreating the movie for you. I watched it, I heard it, I couldn't help but act it out as I was reading it. I couldn't not have the voices be different. And I'm not a voice actor, right? But it was so it's still so vivid for me. I can't not. And people have found what they end up taking away from me reading it to them is it, it's it seems like access to the dimension from which it came.
I agree. I've been listening to it and I am already excited to listen to it again. It does feel like a movie and I was able to really get into the characters.
Yeah,
It's a wealth of wisdom.
thank you. I'm listening to it for the ninth time, and
Wow.
I'm still hearing things that I didn't hear before.
Wow. Wow.
That's in here. That's in here. Of course, I'm at the beginning of downloading, actually, week after next. I get to have a whole week. I don't know how far through the movie I'll get, downloading the sequel to the Queen's Code. Yeah. The plan is to
A
have it
sequel?
out. There's a sequel. And I've known there was a sequel ever since I knew there was the Queen's Code, although I called it the transformation of a frog farmer. Yeah, I've known there was going to be a sequel, and it keeps being revealed. Last summer, they told me the name of the sequel while I was washing dishes, and like it was so obvious. But I was stunned. The King's Code? That's what the sequel's called. The King's Code? Yep. And I'm like, wait, the King's Code. So it's going to be more about the men than the women? Uh-huh. And then it's like, oh my gosh, there's men at the table. Not just Bert and Mike, and not just special appearances. There's men at the table. Oh my gosh. Oh, is there going to be a vow? Are they going to have a vow like the women have a vow? Are they going to have a vow? Uh-huh. Is it? Is it that thing that shows up in the Queen's Code? Is that the vow? Uh-huh.
Oh,
Oh, I love it. I cannot wait.
Oh,
Not wait.
it's what they've shown me so far. I wept. Literally, I wept for like 3 hours. I was driving to Idaho and watching the movie while I'm driving and just it's amazing. It's beautiful and stunning. I had no idea these things were going to happen in this book. What? That's in here? What? That's going to go like that? No. What? So I'm really looking forward to week after next. I get to do basically last week of every month is me downloading, typing.
we really look forward to receiving this download. Allison, if you have another moment, if not, it's okay. And if we need to cut this out, it's okay. Because this is a spiritual podcast, that I'm dying to ask you, when you talk about they who are providing you this information, who are they?
Who are they? Um, Oh my gosh. Sometimes I I know exactly who I'm being directed by. And other times, they is a committee of higher consciousness that's been guiding this process since 1995. Um, so I just think of it, I mean, I sometimes I call it God. Um, but and then there's Jesus. Jesus feels different than God. Sounds different, has different things to say to me. Um, like 4 years ago when I heard you've done not quite 10% of what we need from you. No. That was really bad news for a couple hours. And then it was like, really? I thought I had to wind down. And it's not fun. Only 10%? I got 90% to go? Awesome. And it's pretty funny. So they sometimes it's my husband in spirit. Um and then there's the they that are the 8 characters so far in the Queen's Code. It occurs like they exist in another dimension and they're having lives. And I check in with them. So what's happening over there? And then that's when they, in this case, they, the characters, it wasn't they who told me the title, but it was they show me what's happening. They show me what's happened. I checked in about the sequel in 2018, summer of 2018. So what's going on over there? And what they showed me just rocked my world. So it's funny, I would start getting choked up. Spirit, higher consciousness, the veil. If we're receptive, there's so much to receive, how guided I am, how protected I am, how, I mean, just how firmly grounded in that the only time I suffer is when I say no to God. As long as I keep saying yes. Okay, what's next? That like, it all turns out. As long as I keep saying yes. When I had a holdout. I had a holdout. Anything but that. I'll do anything but that. That was be famous. And I thought I was terrified of being famous, but it turned out it could have been anything but eat avocados. It was just a way to separate. No, I have a say. I get to decide. Nah, not really. I surrendered. I surrendered as a little girl. I was 6 years old. When I asked, what's happening over there? My mom said, um, the neighbor's getting baptized. And I said, what does that mean? And she said, it's when you're consecrated to God. And my reaction was, we have to do that. And my little brother remembers I was relentless with my parents until they joined a church, put us in the classes, and me and my older and younger brothers were all baptized. And once that happened, okay, that's good, that's fine. Yes, I belong to God. Now it's official.
Well, I'm weeping. I'm very touched, Allison. Thank you for sharing that very sacred
No.
insight into your process and your guidance from higher powers.
Yeah, you're welcome. I have such a it's why I talk in many places in this summer. I'm going to do a program that includes it about deserving and how we inherently pay attention to deserving because it means we already earned it and we don't want to owe anything. But we live in a benevolent universe, right? It it's trying to provide for us and it doesn't care if we deserve it. So could we just receive? We just receive the grace, receive the gifts, even like when I go on a particularly challenging like radio show, like Dennis Prager, 20 years, and gosh, I hope he recovers as much as he possibly can. But uh, or when I walk up on a stage, I would just pray. Thank you, God, for having me be whatever I need to be to get your work done today. And then these things that people would call talents just show up. Things I've never done, been able to do, wouldn't think to do it that way. I'm doing it because that's what was needed to get the work done today. And what a privilege. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this. I'm probably going to listen to this on repeat for the next week or weeks or months. I don't even know. I am so thrilled. Thank you so much just for coming here and sharing your wisdom. And we would hold you captive for, hours and hours if we could, just soaking up your just rich wisdom. We just appreciate it so much. So
You're you're
thank
very
you.
welcome. Thanks for doing what you do. I mean, like you said, I got moved when you said interfaith. Oh, when I was the chairman of the Orange County Homeless Issues Task Force, I got to source the creation of what became known as the Interfaith Shelter Network. And it was county agencies and churches of all denominations dividing up their geographic area, and they would trade where they were providing the shelter, like this church, and then the next week would be this church, and then this church, and then there are ones who couldn't provide the space in a church, but they provided the food for the people in the church. And then the county agencies and the nonprofits got to work with the people who were in the shelters to help them get themselves on their feet. And the congregations would provide clothing for interviews. And I mean, it was astonishing. It was an astonishing thing to get to do. And I am not religious. I have respect for all religions. There's beauty in every one of them. And I think it's not one size fits all, right? You gotta find the expression that works for you. And it's been a privilege to be on KRLA, to take questions from women about men and sex from the pulpit of a Baptist church in
Mhm.
Los Angeles.
Mhm.
They wrote them on cards. They did not want to ask these out loud. Um, and the minister hired me to do that. He's one of my students. He hired me to come do that for his people. So it's I love when people are reaching for something more than scratching out survival. Empower it any way I can. Go for now.
Yeah, thank
Thank you
you.
again so much, Allison. To all our listeners, we love you. Happy Valentine's Day. Whatever your relationship status, know that you are loved and held by the universe. As Allison said, there is an abundance for you that has nothing to do with relationship status. And yet, as we seek to implement the things Allison has taught us, may we enrich all of our relationships and find joy in all of them. I'm Jenna Carson,
I'm Sierra Larson.
and we hope that you follow the peace.